Hey team, Richard Tubb here with a video demo that should be of interest to any IT business. Now, we're going to be talking about turning your employees into advocates for your business on social media. And I'm joined today by my really good friend, Mike Allton of Agorapulse. Mike, how you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be a blast.
No, and you and I, we were just saying before we came on air, we caught up at in London when you were across recently for an event, and you were showing me around this feature, and I was so blown away by it. I said, we've got to jump on a video and record this and share it with people.
Yeah, it wasn't even why we were at that event. We were talking more about our ROI features, but it was a lot of fun to show you around, and I'm excited to be able to share this with everybody else today.
Cool. Well, before we dive into that employee advocacy, at Team Tub, we've been a partner of Agorapulse for a number of years now, and we love it. But for the benefit of anyone who isn't familiar with Agorapulse, what exactly is it?
So we're a social media management tool or a solution or a dashboard or a platform. It depends on how you're really looking at it, but they're all basically the same. People use Agorapulse when they have multiple social channels that they want to stay on top of rather than having to go to Facebook and then go to LinkedIn and then go to x.com or twitter.com directly. You have that single dashboard where you can go to publish content, to schedule it out, to monitor what happens next. Are people commenting? Are they replying? Are they sending you direct messages? Because we don't want to miss those in any aspect of our business or our clients' businesses if we're helping them. And then get reports and actually see, okay, well, what actually happened? We maybe saw that post got some engagement because maybe we're getting the notifications on our devices, but how many people did it reach? What happened next? Was there a link? Did people click through to that link? Did they come to the website? Did they do something on the website? Because we integrate with Google Analytics, so we can actually tell that. We can actually see, did a post drive traffic to our website that resulted in some business impact that we want to measure? So we give folks that single platform to keep track of all those things and really focus then on what matters most, which is, coming up with the creative, coming up with the ways to engage with that audience and keep them interested in our businesses.
Yeah, and I was initially drawn to Agorapulse, and we made the connection because I'm a productivity guy, and it was all about inbox zero. So Agorapulse is like inbox zero for social media. It means all their different inboxes everywhere pull into one place. However, within the team now, we use Agorapulse for all our social media, like scheduling, publishing, listening, reporting. It just works really, really well. So anybody who is not familiar with Agorapulse, I would definitely recommend go and check it out. But the new feature that we were talking about, so employee advocacy. So tell us a little bit about what that is.
So there's a couple of interesting really aspects to it. The idea at a high level is that you as the brand are facilitating having your employees talk about your brand or some aspect of your brand through social media. And there's a lot of ways we could do that, right? We could use a Slack channel and say, hey, we've got this press release or this new blog post or something like that. Could you please share it? We can send an email. Hey, here's a link to a blog post or press release or whatever, or a job posting. Please share it. The problem with those techniques is, first of all, we're not really helping them to create that share. We're giving them the link. We're relying on the employees to do something. We're not tracking that at all. We have no real idea who participated, who didn't, unless we're, someone's actually going to every employee's social profile and saying, well, did Billy share that post? Nobody wants to do that. And it makes it really hard then to incentivize, because that's really what we want to do. We want to create a great relationship with our employees, and we want to incentivize them to do this kind of stuff, because we can't obligate them to share to their personal profile stuff about the business. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but I think it's important to have some kind of incentives in there. So we wanted to have a tool that would make all of that possible. And that's why we built Advocacy.
Yeah, so I'm dying. Can you show us the feature in action,
Yeah.
Mike? I'm dying to jump in and have a look at it.
And so what we're looking at here is a specific screen inside of Agorapulse. I mentioned at the outset, Agorapulse is a dashboard. There's a lot of things we do, like I said, from publishing and the inbox and the calendar. All that's in there. That's included when you set up a subscription for Agorapulse. Advocacy is an add-on. We'll talk about what that means in a little bit. But this is the first screen. We're looking at different campaigns, either ones that I've run or team members have run for various purposes. We can see a campaign name that whatever it is that we decided that made sense for us internally. We can see who created the campaign, when they created it, how many people they sent that to, and then we can see the results of those campaigns. Because what we're doing with Advocacy is we're deciding in advance, these are the people that we want to work with, and these could be internal or external.
Right.
So employees or influencers. You're going to have a list, And we'll show you what that looks like in just a second. And when you set up a campaign, you're going to be sending an email to every single individual that you selected to receive this campaign. And in that email, they're going to get the message that you want them to send with a copy and paste link, and then buttons to share to their individual social profiles. So they will be prompted to share it to, say, LinkedIn, and they'll have suggested copy that you give them that they can just paste into the post. The link's already there. They can edit it however they want. They can even have multiple versions of the copy, either a couple different ideas for what you want them to talk about, or maybe even a couple different languages. If you're a global multilingual company like we are at Agorapulse, half our team is in France. They're speaking French. We have specific French channels. So we might, if we wanted to do a global campaign, have English, French, and say Spanish or German versions of the same copy. So we see all that here in this just snapshot view. We see how many opened it, how many as a percentage clicked through, how many as a percentage shared, and then what actually happened next. Did they drive some traffic with these links? And right now, this is what we're sharing as link posts. Within about a couple of weeks of this podcast dropping around mid-May, we're actually going to release the ability to share videos, links to other social posts, and that sort of thing to really expand what we could potentially share. But right now, we're just sharing trackable links, and you can see that tracking data. So I'll show you what this looks like after the fact. So this is a campaign that's already been sent out, and we can drill down to see exactly who shared it, who opened it, what that click-through rate was, and what those visits look like. We can actually see who the best advocate was. Happened to be me. I didn't know that. I'm not touting my own horn here. But this was a campaign to promote our opening for a social media manager. So I shared it to my channels and happened to get the most shares. But we can see all that here. So if this was an incentivized campaign, that individual, whoever he or she was, might win a Amazon gift card or whatever it is that you want to give away to encourage your employees to participate in the campaign. You can see all the people that it was sent to, whether they shared it, whether they opened it, whether they drove any clicks. I'll stop there for a second. What questions do you have, Richard?
So I'm fascinated. We started off the conversation talking about employee advocacy, but you just hit on something that was one of my earlier questions, which is, can this be used for anybody internally or externally? The reason being, within certain spheres, some people would refer to me as a influencer within the IT industry.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that nowadays people place more faith in influencers than possibly in the brands directly. So, this can be used internally and externally.
Yes. In fact, that's one of the beauties of advocacy as a tactic overall. What you're leaning on is word of mouth. And while your brand may not have a lot of trust and authenticity because it's a brand and people don't listen to brands, your employees have a lot more oomph that they're carrying to their audience. And the same to your point with influencers. So you can work with either internal or external advocates. And what we have here are simple lists. So you've got internal and external lists, and you can put as many in there as you want to. The pricing is dependent on how many you want to put in there. We'll get into that in a little bit. But we've set up 145 internal advocates. That's approximately how many people work for Agorapulse. And then I happen to manage our external influencers. So I have 72 external advocates. And these show up here as lists. And these are essentially segments.
So you can segment all of the advocates.
You can break down your employees by department or by language, whatever makes sense to you internally. And you can break down those external advocates. Again, whatever way makes sense to you. Maybe it's subject matter experts. Maybe, again, it's language or region. If you've got German influencers versus French influencers versus UK influencers, you can break those out if it makes sense to your business. You can set up as many different segments or diffusion lists, as they call them here inside the tool, as you need to. So a great example here is I've got an external list. These are just our community leaders. So these are folks who've stepped up. They're a major part of our group, our Facebook group, or our larger community overall. Versus here we have formal ambassadors. These are people who have raised their hand and said, yes, I want to be an actual ambassador for Agorapulse. That means something a little bit different than just, say, an influencer. On the internal side, we have our English speaking versus our French speaking within our customer service team. We have a marketing French and a marketing English, product, sales, and so on. A lot
Brilliant.
of different ways to slice and dice these. And then you simply add them however you want. I'm in a list here. I want to go to here. I want to add an employee advocate. I just put in their email, their name, where they are. Is it internal or external?
Got it.
And I can import by simply copying and pasting a list of emails if I want to do a bunch in bulk.
Now, for the advocates, do they need a special logon or a special app or anything like that?
That's a great question. The answer is no.
Brilliant.
So they don't need a special app. They don't need to take up a seat in Agorapulse. They don't even use Agorapulse, or at least they don't have to use Agorapulse. They're simply going to get an email, and the email is going to have buttons in it that have the different social networks: LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Pinterest. Those are the 4 networks supported where you can share a link. Because we can't share a link to Instagram, so we're not going to offer that as an option. And it's just going to open up that particular app's website, right, where now we're seeing what it looks like, share a post to X or Facebook or something like that. The fun thing there is it's also going to give them a link that they could put into an email, or they could share in a direct message or anything like that. They can advocate for your brand wherever they want to advocate.
The interesting thing I find about this is we've seen employee advocacy done really clumsily, dare I say, and it's no knock on anybody, but we've all seen the things where people are almost being forced to share like posts on LinkedIn and things like that. And you look at it and you go, oh, or worse, somebody within the team, perhaps marketing, has given them a link and said, hey, can you evangelize about this? And they've literally, Mike, gone and posted the link and said, there you go. And it's like, oh my goodness. So tell us a little bit more about the type of text. You talked about content videos coming soon, but the type of text that's in there, can you have multiple different sort of templates to give to them?
Yeah, in fact, I think it's important to just reinforce right from the start that as a brand, you cannot require employees to post to their personal social profiles. You just can't. You can't expect it. All you can do is ask, and you can incentivize. And then with a tool like this, you can make it as easy as possible for them to actually do it, and then for you to actually follow up and say, okay, yeah, great. 20% of the employees did it. Here's what happened. So let's go back to the main screen, and let's actually create a campaign. So we're going to call it test campaign. And the description, this is for internal use. And you can also put some additional internal notes in here if you want to. But we're already seeing a preview to the right of what this is going to look like and what the recipients are going to receive. So now we're going to go over here and let's do www.agorapulse.com as the link. And immediately it's going to pull up a link preview so we can see what that will look like when it's shared. And here you have copy suggestions. So you can type in, this is a copy suggestion. I can't type when I'm looking through the side. And then you can add another one, and another one, and another one.
Brilliant.
So from a functional perspective, that's what that looks like. That's how that works. You can just add additional copy suggestions. And when they receive the email, it's going to be a click to open up a web page. When they look at that web page, they can just like a carousel scroll through however many suggestions you've given them. Now, here we can have some best practices to share. First, think about where you're wanting them to share this information, and think about the requirements of those platforms. In other words, if you want them to share to Twitter or X, then this has got to be less than 280 characters, what you're asking them to share, including the link, or it won't work. So that's something that you'll have to test for now outside of the platform. Eventually, we'll add the same kinds of checks and balances that we have within our normal Agorapulse app. Because right now, today, if you're publishing a piece of content inside of Agorapulse, as you check the different profiles that you want to share that to, Agorapulse will tell you, oh, it's too long for LinkedIn, it's too long for Twitter, you chose Instagram, but you don't have an image. We'll tell you all of that. Here, it's a little basic for now. So that stuff will be added. So you'll want to test that on the platforms themselves. If you want them to share it to LinkedIn, they'll still see Twitter as an option, but you can just tell them in the description, look, we want you to focus on LinkedIn, right? So you'll have a lot more text to share, which you might want to do if you're sharing, say, a job opening, You might want
Yeah.
them to say a little bit more about what's in the job, what's in the role, which is what I did in that social media manager post that I shared recently. The post included, we were looking for somebody who's bilingual in French and English. That's a requirement. We want that as part of the social share. They don't necessarily have to live in France or Canada. They could be in the United States as long as they're bilingual. That was an important part. So that was part of the copy that we had them to share.
Yeah.
If
Well,
this
I'm
is a blog
thinking,
post,
forgive
yeah,
me for
go ahead.
jumping in because I'm thinking of some of the use cases for this, Mike. So I'm an advisor to some quite successful vendors in the IT managed service space. One area I can immediately see this being useful is to ensure the success of events like vendor conferences or attending trade shows, things like that. But not everybody is going to want to share that out there. So yeah, I can already see the benefits of giving multiple copy, specific targets for it, but also the reporting that you mentioned, like because some people are just not going to be on board with being evangelists, are they? Another or advocates, and other people are going to be like, yeah, I'm really into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some basic truths here, which is that even though we have 145 team members, they don't necessarily all use social media. Half of our team
Right.
are programmers and developers, right? They don't have time for social media. They're worrying about, code. So they might not have active LinkedIn profiles. But to your
Yeah.
point, what works really good, and this is true with all marketing, right, is if we segment. We think about our audience and the platform and the message that we want to get in front of that audience. So if you've got an event that's in a very specific location, maybe we only target the people who live within a reasonable area of that, who might actually reach people who could, like if we're trying to drive people to a booth, for instance. If we're doing the B2B marketing expo in London and we want people to come to our booth at the expo hall, there's no point in me asking one of our employees who lives in Southern California
Right.
to share to her social channels. Yes, she reaches a global audience regardless of size, and yet we know that most people that she's connected to on social media are probably going to be relatively close to where she's at. There's probably not much point in having
Yeah.
her share that, but we certainly have audience and employee members who live in the UK. Let's
And have
focus
you
on them.
have you got any best practices for, I can see this being a powerful tool for marketing teams to ensure or to encourage advocacy. But I can also imagine some employees won't be comfortable and may even get sick of being asked to pimp up their employers. So the segmenting, is there any best practices that you could recommend to help enthusiastic advocates? Pour fuel on the fire, but for those who are just not responding to go, okay, we get the message.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So I'm going to click on next so we can see the next step when we're building a campaign, and that is to choose our diffusion lists, our segments, right? And the first way to think about these is to think about, like we've been talking, who are these people? Who are they reaching with their social channels? And how is that going to relate to the message we're asking them to send? Is it a job posting? Great. Let's have the people in that department be the
Right.
focus for sharing that job posting, because they're the most likely to be connected to other people that would be a great fit for that job posting. So when we advertise the social media manager position, we asked people like myself in marketing. We didn't ask our product and technical engineers to share that to social media because the fit wasn't there. But once you've been doing that for a while, and I think I recommend probably no more than one campaign per month
Right.
on average. We don't want to, again, like you said, ask them to share too much. But once you've been doing it for a while, then you'll start to get a sense for who are your most eager and successful advocates and who just is not interested whatsoever. And then you could add an additional list or lists here where you start to look at, okay, who are our most, vocal advocates? Who are the people who have raised their hands and said, yeah, I'd be happy to share something every single week. Give me every blog post you publish. I will share it out to social media. You might have people like that in your organization. And so you could leverage that and have them in a list and just maintain it, because you can add or remove people from the list anytime. And you can make that a nice two-way conversation where you're regularly asking in your internal Slack or what other channels you're using, how are you guys feeling about this? Are we sharing too much? Are we sharing too little? Do you want to share more? Do you want to share less? And you can move people around. It's a little extra work, but to have those individuals who are vocal advocates, who do have an audience, sharing more often is a benefit to everybody. You're going
Yeah.
to have people who are proud to be a part of your organization, who are happy to share the content that you're creating or the events that you're creating or the job opportunities that you're creating with their audience, because that lends authority to them, that makes them look good to their audience, and it helps, again, your brand by driving traffic and interest.
Yeah. I keep interrupting as you're going through this flow, Mike. Forgive me because these
That's all right.
questions keep popping up. So I've already mentioned earlier, it's fairly obvious when someone shares something to social media that they've been, strong armed into, press ganged into actually doing that. I would also say, though, it's fairly obvious when somebody just shares something boilerplate that isn't in their own voice, for want of a better word. So is there a way, is it built in, or just for my clarity, to give the advocate the options to rewrite the message in their own tone of voice, or is it literally they can only share what you've given them?
They can absolutely rewrite all the messages. So the copy is framed as this: here's some suggested copy, which makes it, of course, super easy to just copy and paste,
Yeah.
which honestly, that's what most people will do. So we want to take time to craft really interesting and engaging copy. If it's a blog post, for instance, I like taking snippets out of the blog, particularly if it's about a particular topic that maybe we can start a conversation, because this is just good social media practices 101. In fact, I probably would interject at this point that it would be a good idea to get your social media team involved in creating this copy so they can help you as the brand come up with copy that makes sense for social media. I wouldn't expect my HR manager to necessarily
Right.
know what's going to resonate with a social audience. I certainly wouldn't expect somebody on a product or engineering team to know that, or accounting, whoever it is that's wanting to do a campaign for their own purposes. So work with your social team to that. But then, yeah, once they get the email and they go to the web page, they'll be able to copy any one of the suggested pieces of copy that you wanted and paste that into a social post, or write whatever they want.
Excellent. So we were jumping through here. Is there? Do you want to show us the next stage after this? Or?
Yeah, I'll just pick a list that's there. And so this is what it's going to look like at the
Okay.
very end. You've set up this campaign. You can see a preview of the email message that they're going to get, that you're a member of our advocacy program and we're asking you to share this content. And then there's just a big button, big orange button, super easy, discover the content. And that's going to take them to a web page that has all the suggested copy. If you've got that here, that's what we're seeking on the advocates view here to the right of the screen. They'll see the link. They can click on the link so they can look at what's being shared if they want to. And we certainly encourage them to take a look at, okay, what am I actually sharing? What am I asking my audience to do? They can take as much time as they want to. But that's what it's going to look like.
Excellent. And is it a single button? Like if I was going to use the word lazy, Mike, I'm going to rephrase that. But if they wanted to take the path of least resistance and just literally click a button, does the email say share this to LinkedIn? Sorry, the website that they go to, does it go to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Instagram, things of that nature?
Yeah, it's super easy.
Yeah.
They're going to click a button for LinkedIn, and it's going to pop up a LinkedIn modal, the share modal, right? It's not going to take you
Yeah.
to LinkedIn.com. It's going to show the window that is the actual share. So they can paste in the copy or rewrite it if they want to. But, to your point, the path of least resistance, just paste in whatever your team member suggested you share and click share. So it's a matter of just a couple clicks to get that post out to LinkedIn, to Facebook, to Twitter, to Pinterest.
I love it. I'm absolutely loving this, the idea behind the advocacy full stop. As I said, there's a lot of vendors within the IT industry that we work with, that we do advisory work with, that I think they're going to love this. However, I know that reporting is something really important to those type of vendors. Can you report on these advocacy campaigns? I think you showed us a little bit earlier about click-throughs and things. Tell us a bit more about the reporting.
Yeah, so we'll go back here and we'll see all the active campaigns. You can actually have them a bunch more archived because we've been obviously using our own tool for some time. Sure. You can even have campaigns in a draft mode. So you look at the campaign that you want to look at. Let's look at one that is in English, so I understand what we're looking at. Because again, we've got a French team, so they're sharing, French job postings and that sort of thing with great success, I might add. That's been a huge thing that we've seen, that when we ask our employees of a particular department to share a job opening for that department, because they're already connected with those kinds of people typically on LinkedIn, the wealth of candidates that come in that are just so highly qualified, that are a great match. So we're already seeing a huge benefit internally of using our own tool for that for that approach.
Yeah.
So here we have a campaign that I ran in March of this year, March 2024, that was to help launch our MarTech Show podcast. We have a weekly webinar called the MarTech Show, and by late March, we had released it as a podcast, and I wanted to get some of our influencers helping to share that news. So we had 125 advocates. This was actually a mixed group where I had a lot of our external advocates, and I also had a lot of our internal advocates, because the sentiment was the same. So I tapped a lot of our marketers internally. This contacted rate, that tells you that you might have a couple bad email addresses. It should be 100% most of the time. So I've got some housekeeping to do. I need to go and figure out, okay, who was the bad email address and why was that bad? 64% open rate, which anybody in email marketing can tell you that's amazing.
Brilliant, yeah.
20% click-through rate, 12% of them actually shared it, and we had 50 visits. So this campaign, which took me like 5 minutes to build out because it's just so fast, drove an extra 90 visits to the podcast page or link that I was having them share. Not to mention all the extra shares and visibility and brand awareness that's happening, because now we've got a bunch of people sharing to social media about Agorapulse, or in this case, the MarTech Show.
Yeah.
Then we can drill down into the performance tab. We can see that May King, who you might know, she's
we know and love May King. How you doing, May King?
Absolutely. She's a fantastic advocate for us. So she was the number one advocate on that particular campaign. But we want to drill down. We want to find out, okay, well, what actually happened, right? May King was number one, fantastic, but what happened there? We had 84 people open the emails, 26 clicked through, 16 of them shared, and we can see the breakdown of where they shared it. X, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, all that's breaking down there. And then we can see the visits. Twitter actually drove the most traffic.
Interesting.
This particular campaign.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is interesting. It's the kind of thing that people are going to want to pay attention to. Businesses are going to want to know not only who's doing the most sharing, but which platforms are resonating, particularly as we start to roll out improvements and advancements to this tool. You can drive advocates to specific platforms. You could have a Pinterest pin or a LinkedIn company page post that the brand created, and you want to drive advocates to that post and ask them to share and amplify that post to their network. And it will be really helpful to know in advance which advocates and which platforms and networks are resonating the most with our target audiences.
Yeah.
And then again, you can see who specifically was doing the most shares, broken down by segment if you wanted to, right? So this is our external ambassadors and our sales team. I'm going to close these so we can more easily see that broken down. So this is a report by list, by segment, what the open rates and the click rates and the shared rates were. And then I can open that up if I want to go back to that detail, and I can see, who shared it, who didn't, who opened it, who didn't, and so on.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to step away from the actual product for a moment and just talk about employee or advocacy in general. So it's going to be new for some viewers. So any advice from those years and years of experience and this the wisdom that you can give us on how to start approaching or rolling out advocacy within any type of business?
It's a great question, because the first step is not to roll out this tool. The first step is to educate employees. You need to have a meeting or a series of emails or messages that say, look, we would like to start a new advocacy program here at Brand X. And that means we would like you to share from time to time job openings, events, content, whatever it is, product features, to your personal social profiles. And you may want to go so far as to have some training about personal social media and personal branding on social media. It would be great to bring in somebody like Sarah Clay, who could do a little workshop for your employees on how to use LinkedIn, how to set up their profiles, how to make sure that their profiles are totally buttoned up so that they're actually creating a great personal presence on LinkedIn for themselves. That's going to help them, and that's going to help your brand, because we want them to share, right? It helps us if they have a good social presence on LinkedIn and they're actively increasing their network, actively engaging with their network and reaching out and doing the networking that we want people to do on LinkedIn. So I would advise investing in that kind of training and just general social media usage before you ever open the tool.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Get them up to speed on that. And then tell them, of course, we're going to use a tool. It's called Advocacy by Agorapulse. You're going to get an email from time to time that tells you what we would like you to share and takes you to a website with simple buttons to whichever social platforms you would like. You don't have to share every post, and you don't have to share to every social platform. Maybe you don't use Pinterest. Okay, don't worry about it. Ignore that button. Maybe you do use X, but for very specific purposes that have nothing to do with your job.
Yeah.
That's okay. Maybe you're into gaming, and that's your X presence is all about gaming. No matter what the business is talking about, the content won't fit your presence on X. That is 100% okay. You don't even have to tell anybody that. Nobody's going to ask you. You should just be told up front by the brand that if your profiles don't have anything to do with the content that we're sharing, you don't have to share it. Don't worry about it. But if they do, we would appreciate it because it's going to help you. It's going to help us. So fortunately for me, I'm a marketer. I work for a marketing company. Virtually everything Agorapulse wants to share, I'm happy to share that because it's going to be a good fit for my audience and my channels. And I'm going to focus on LinkedIn and Facebook because that's where I've got the biggest presence, but I would typically share that everywhere, which is why I was driving up a lot of links with that particular position. Plus, it was a really interesting post for my target audience. That particular post got a lot of engagement. But that's where I would start. I would start with education up front, right? And then do just a quick overview. Here's the tool. It's super easy. You're going to get an email. It'll ask you to share. Share if you want to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Mike. That's gold right there. Just talking about how to get started with advocacy within the business before we even talk about the tool. But the tool you've put together, the platform, does look very cool. Looks as though it makes it really easy. So let's get to some brass tacks, if we may. How is advocacy licensed within Agorapulse? Is it an add-on? Do you have to use Agorapulse? How does it work?
It is an add-on, so you do have to have an Agorapulse subscription. All but we do have a free Agorapulse account. It won't work there, and we do have a basic account. It won't work there either. But anything above that, so like the second tier on up, I'm not talking the specific names of the plans because sometimes the plans names change. But whatever the second tier is, from that point on, you can add this to that plan, and the pricing is $150 a month, and that allows you to send as many campaigns as you want to. You can send up to 50 advocates. So if you're a brand that's got more than 50 employees or you have more than 50 influencers, just talk to our sales team. We'll figure that out for you. But you can send as many campaigns as you want. And you can have all those different differentiation lists or segments within that total list of ambassadors.
$150 a month.
Yeah.
Wow. That is going to be like, it's a no-brainer, isn't it, for a lot of people watching this? So
there are advocacy tools out there that are they're just so much more expensive because they're standalone tools, right?
Yeah.
So the benefit here is we're building on top of Agorapulse, and like I said at the outset, they have so many fun plans for this tool. Starting in mid-May, we're going to release the ability to share more than just a link to a website asset. And then we're going to integrate it with our ROI tool. So you're going to have Google Analytics integration, and you're going to be able to see, we can see that there were shares, and I can see the traffic. I can't yet see inside this tool what happened next, but that's coming.
Right. Yeah, super powerful. So I guess there's going to be two types of people watching this video, Mike. There's going to be somebody watching who already uses Agorapulse. So let's start with them. So what's their next step? If they're like us, they know and love Agorapulse and they want to get into the evangelism, into the advocacy piece of the platform. What's the next step to find out more?
Easy. Just drop a message to your support manager, your customer support contact, and they'll talk to you about adding that on, because we'll do want to have a quick conversation about how many advocates do you need,
right?
And make sure everyone's understanding. Okay, this is how many we need, this is how many we get, and all that sort of thing. Because they're kind of like seats, but not really. There is a cap there. So a simple conversation, and then we'll enable that for your account.
No worries. And I guess the second type of person who's watching this is going to be somebody who's completely new to Agorapulse. And we'd point them to go and check out Mike's content about Agorapulse. He shares a lot there, the real expert to go to, the actual platform. But where would you recommend they begin to explore the platform?
Best thing you can do is go to agorapulse.com and either sign up for a free trial or a demo. And the difference really just is in kind of the size and complexity of your business and where your personal comfort level is. You might be the kind of person that wants to just dive in there and poke around yourself. Well, then sign up for a free trial and do that. But if you're managing a team, maybe you're even a procurement officer, right? And you've been asked to find a tool for your team. Well, then you're definitely going to want to get a demo where one of our salespeople will walk you through, answer all the questions you have, bring your whole team on if they want to, have multiple meetings. We're happy to do that because we understand for some businesses, particularly with a certain size, any kind of a purchase is a somewhat protracted decision. You've got
Committee
layers of
decision.
people who, yeah, you've got layers of people that need to see the product, understand, what problems are it's going to solve, how is it going to impact the organization from different perspectives, and we're happy to help with all of that.
Wonderful. And of course, Mike, there's going to be people watching who perhaps want to continue the conversation with you personally. So what's the best place for them to reach you?
So the best place is usually LinkedIn. I am on every social network. I've
You
been
are.
on social networks for decades, but LinkedIn's great. Mike Allton, Allton. Hit me up there. You can follow me. You can connect with me. You can send me a direct message. Happy to answer all the questions.
Wonderful. Well, Mike, thanks for taking the time out to show us this exciting platform. And I think a lot of people are going to be interested in it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Richard.